All right, the Bucks. It is talking Buccaneers with me, Fumane, and again, yeah, I've got Simanga Makubu and Mluzondo. And yeah, we're gonna talk about what we saw last weekend. Orlando Pirates was playing against SuperSport United, first game of the season, MTN8 quarterfinal. And I mean, I just want to get right into it. And ngizokala ngawe Simanga, because I mean, I was with you at the stadium and we were watching the game together. What was your overall impression? Let's start with the turnout, the atmosphere at the stadium, and yeah, what are your thoughts around that?
Sure, Films. Petru, as you see, just now in the stadium, I mean, the atmosphere was on another level. And I think there's something that you mentioned, even on your channel, you say people underestimate ukuba stadium there ukuthi injani akufani nokubukela ku-TV, and what you see on TV also is different from what you see in the stadium. It was in another level. I mean, even the stands upstairs, in fact, so people were full. The stadium was actually full. What reason why it was full, it's something that we can always debate about, but yeah, it was on another level. And thanks to Amapagania for coming out. Hopefully we can also do the same on the semi-final as well as Champions League.
Yeah. Uh, Lou, I mean, I'm so sorry for to put you on the spot like this, but you were watching it on television. Yeah, what was that like? Did you get a sense of the fact that like it was a buzzing atmosphere at the stadium?
Thanks. Yeah, no, it was. I actually really wish I was there. You could just tell from even the images that were being posted on social media, people were flocking in. And, this is an atmosphere that we really hope we can keep because, it's not an atmosphere that we are used to, especially when the season is starting in Orlando. So I'm really, really hoping it can continue. Those of us who were not there really missed out, but we're hoping next time we can all join in. But it was fantastic, and these are the type of atmospheres you need because our opponents, they can just be intimidated by that atmosphere, and I think it carried us in the match because we didn't really start well.
Yeah. Did you think actually? Let me ask you, when I'm Lou, do you think that because that's one thing? I mean, I want to talk about, which is that I felt like there was a sense in which the fans created the win for Orlando Pirates. Is that what it felt like watching it? That there was a sudden turn. What was the point of where things turned? Because I mean, we can talk about, and you say that we didn't start well. Being at the stadium, I felt like it was a moment of the fans suddenly being behind the team. Did it feel like that as well, watching it on television?
Absolutely. When the match started, I was actually quite nervous because Super Sports were really attacking us. So I thought Uti maybe they would score first. But there was a moment for me where I thought Uti the match actually turned. Utito in midfield where when he used his skill and his flair, and there was a moment le ekejwe umfukeng. I felt Uti that was the turning point we match because the crowd just started going, on and on and on. And I think that's the moment where it started to change for us because really the first couple of minutes, I think it was really nervy for Amajita. We couldn't connect our passes. We were just all over the place. But that moment where the crowd just started going, I think Utito there really showed why, in my opinion, I feel Uguti you should be wearing jersey number 10 for Orlando Pirates because that instinct was that moment where he just turned this into in our favor. And the crowd from there, they just started buzzing, they were singing his name, and we started to show our intent.
Yeah. Smanga, I want to ask you a different question. What do you think was the reason for like the large turnout at the stadium? Because I mean, we can talk about the fact that we needed a Tito moment to like turn the atmosphere and make it a festival one. But even in the turnout itself, it almost seems like there was already expectation. just by mere fact of the large turnout that was there. What do you think was the reason for that?
It's quite a couple of reasons in my own view. Firstly, is indlela that we ended the season ngayo. I think people were looking out for the new season, which we're going to continue. The momentum that we had on the previous season. And secondly, obviously, we cannot take away the fact that people have been hungry for football. I mean, we've been sitting for close to 2 months without football, and we really wanted to come back. I think thirdly, it has to do with what Pirates were doing in terms of Spain, where we saw the journey, them being there. And people felt they wanted to be there on the very first game of the season when actually they came to Orlando. And one of the reasons also some of us went today was to see what we saw in Spain, if we're gonna actually able to do that. Because there's a lot of bars in terms of Orlando Pirates. Will they be able to catch up with Sundowns? And I think that's what people are looking for. The first game of the season, I was expecting which people are going to come out, but the way they came out, it was unbelievable. What an atmosphere it was.
Yeah, what an atmosphere it was indeed. But again, you and I were together, Simanga, and something you were saying to me in the first 10 minutes is that SuperSport United were pressing us really high. It took some adjusting for us, and it really felt like they were gonna go ahead, like Umlu is saying, that the fear was that if they get the first goal, then I mean things might turn around. So one of my fears is that I do feel like it's gonna take something like that, where all this hype, all this build up comes crashing down because of a SuperSport United going 1-0 up front. I don't know how you guys feel about that fear. Simanga, let me start with you. Do you also fear for something like that, turning everything around, what's happening now, the excitement and all of that? Am I right in thinking that? Am I pushing it? Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. It's because even the feeling in the stadium when the game started, I think the first 10, 15 minutes, as Umlu has mentioned, I mean, the intensity of the game was on another level. I mean, the tempo of the game was on another level. And it also talks to us at the preseason in terms of us going to Spain. It showed what it actually helped us in that instance. And the fear that you're talking about, it was great. Even the supporters next to us, we were so fearful because SuperSport came with something that was different. Because personally, I did not think they're going to press us this high. And they pressed that extremely high, we could not even play. And I think also, when I go back and I look at the games that we played in Spain, we considered stupid goals, and they were a result of us playing from the back. I think 2 of those goals, we literally passed the ball to the opponent and they scored. And SuperSport literally might have seen that, and they were like, if we could score in the first 10 or 15 minutes, we're going to silence the entire Orlando Stadium. And if they have scored, I think the game could have turned out differently. And yeah, the atmosphere in the 15 minutes, I was extremely nervous, even myself.
Yeah. Blue, a different question for you. Are there any, interesting observations that you observed throughout the game? Just anything that comes to mind in terms of an interesting observation, whether it be player, stylistic, tactical, anything that sort of was a standout for you?
There were quite a couple, but the one thing that I really enjoyed to see was the character of the team. We showed character in this match because matches like this are like the same type of matches you will find Quick-Have Interclub. So character team, especially when it's 1-1, also the change, because when Ukabelo Dlamini came in and he was playing with Umbata, for me, I felt that was a very interesting dynamic. And it's a dynamic that I would actually like to see going forward from the Orlando Pirates. And ironically, Usmanga was actually mentioning that even before the match, it would be something nice to see, because a team like the Pirates, especially when you're playing at home, you need to actually go on the offensive so that our opponents can feel they are away from home and they can feel that pressure. And for me, I would really like to see more of that, especially Utito taking that game by the scruff of its neck. I was really happy to see a combination yakhe, Usaleng, you know, but you could tell Uti the guys are not really like there yet, but the fact that we were able to play at that intensity definitely speaks to the fact Uti we had a very good preseason in Spain, and you could tell Uti the guys were really ready, raring to go. I am just hoping Uti we can play more of these matches, because if we can play more of these matches, the guys will get used to it, and it can really help us going through to the season, because there are certain matches where we drop the intensity. I am hoping Uguti, this match we can play more of them, because as you are saying, Uguti, we tend maybe to live on the edge in terms of thinking Uguti, maybe if we can lose a match, it can come crumbling down. I think Uguti playing more of these matches will help these guys to realize Uguti, actually every match that is played by Orlando Pirates should be treated like a cup final. So I'm hoping Uguti they can use that and spare them on for the league matches as well, because that's where we are missing in terms of the consistency.
Yeah. Simanga, here's a question for you to say, this is just a thought that's coming to mind, because I mean, again, Umlu is touching on the fact that you are advocating for us to be, if I can call it, bold in the midfield and play with Dlamini Noma Swangani, Tito, in the midfield alongside Talent Mbata, to which mixed reactions from people. There are some people who are like, yes, let's go for that. But I think the overwhelming majority is now used to the double pivot, and have said that there's a bit of lack of protection for the back line for us when you play with that midfield. Now, my question to you is to say that, do you think that Orlando Pirates should, be bold to say, I mean, the plan anyway for us is we're going to try and stop the opposition as high as possible. Do you think there's a lack of committing to that plan? Especially, I mean, it's one thing for the club, but even for the fans, I think the fans still feel like, hey, we'd rather have protection, protecting us at the back. But do you think there's actually maybe a possibility that part of the reason why we're not going to become very good on the press is that we're not 100% convinced that we're going to win the ball back when we press a team high? And hence the thought behind people thinking, no, let's not risk and play all of these attacking players at the same time.
Sure, Mfethu. Firstly, this is something that Mlu has mentioned, even before the game on a Saturday exam. I suggested to Gutsi, because I was looking at the profile of the players that we have. I was also looking at Barca when they dominated Europe and they won a treble. They were using literal Iniesta, Xavi, no Busquets. And when I look at Tumbata, he had all the qualities and profile of a Busquets. But our South African, or let me say us as supporters from South Africa, we're still holding on to the old-fashioned kind of a central midfielder, and then we haven't moved away from that. And I think at some point we have to move away from that, because Mbata basically is not a person that's going to give you those hard tackles, but he knows where to position himself offensively and defensively and be able to protect the defense. The second thing is what Jose also did there. If you've noticed carefully, Umonyane and Ohoto were not bumping forward as they used to. There was some kind of a limit to say you can go on a certain opportunity, but the shape of the team when you are on an offensive, it was sort of maintained, and that helped a little bit. With this actually playing with Mbata actually helps. And for me, I would say to Jose, release the handbrake. Let us go for this for Mbata, no Tito, no Dlamini, because honestly, I think it can work for us. It might not necessarily work on all games in that regard, but I just feel that let's just release the brake, the handbrake.
Yeah. Look, something, I was talking to Smam about during the game, and maybe I should have, sent you a quick text to ask you how you're feeling about that. Was that the game felt like it was crying out for someone like Kabelo Dlamini. I mean, I think actually, in fact, my observation was that part of the reason why we were struggling to build out from the back and progress our play and get into creating chances for that sort of first 15 minutes was the fact that, Makhehleni Makhaula, for one, I mean, two things. He was playing a bit higher than Mbatha. Mbatha was playing a bit deeper than Makhehleni Makhaula. But two is that Makhehleni Makhaula, that's not his strength anyway. I think he's not your chief principal progressor, if I can call it that, of play. He's more of a, keep the possession for us, keep it ticking, which I think sometimes to a fault, people have said they don't want that kind of player, but there is a necessity for someone who can play those safe passes so that we're not always turning over possession, right? So I hope people don't, get me wrong in that sense to say he's no use for us. But do you think that, well, a couple of questions for you is that, again, I say, the game was crying out for Kabelo Dlamini in that sense because Talent Mbatha was maybe finding it hard to progress the play alone. Do you think we need to start playing Kabelo Dlamini in that position just going forward? Or do you think that we stick with people like Makhehleni Makhaula in that position?
I'm all for giving players an opportunity to play, but I'm also of the opinion that we need to play people where they can give us their maximum. So I would advocate for us to play with Tito, to play with Kabelo Dlamini, to play with Mbatha. Mbatha, if he can actually, be molded into a deep line playmaker, I feel Uguti, he has the profile, he has the qualities, he can do it. It's just that maybe it's a role that he should actually be developed to play. But all in all, Nami, I could see Uguti Umakhaula was actually playing a bit further higher. So probably also due to the fact Uguti SuperSport approached the match the way they did, maybe it would seem as if it was not working. But I am all for the other system whereby we can have Ukabelo, we can have Mbatha, we can have Utito. I feel that would give us a whole lot more, especially with Usale Nomfukeng as well advancing. It would actually free us. But I think ilele lapha yakuMbatha. If Mbatha can actually be molded into that Sergio Busquets type of player, and if ama interceptions are on point, the positioning, because that role, defensive midfielder in the modern sense, where you see Abo Rodri, your Busquets, it's a role that needs a player, not necessarily a player who's your typical old school type of defensive midfielder, but more of a player who understands the positioning yake, understands where to move when the ball is not with us, and when the ball is with us, akwazi ukusilekelela in terms of helping us in the progression years. So I feel ukuthi Mbatha, he has lauma qualities. It's a matter of maybe a technical team showing him how he can actually adjust the player role, and I believe we can really cook with that system.
Yeah, maybe to press you a bit more, Lou, does Pirates have the time this season to, retrain or repurpose Mbatha in that sense? Because I mean, with doing those kind of, if I can call it experiment, or I feel like experiment is a bit harsh, but yeah, experiment. I mean, I do agree with you that, in terms of on the ball, he's got all the profile. With the intelligence, he's a very good receiver of the ball. He's a very good passer of it. Maybe the conversation, like you're saying, might be around his anticipation of reading games and being able to be intelligent and steal the ball and break up our attacks from our opposition. But do you think that there is Pirates has the room this season to do a slight shift of the system away from what we've seen. I mean, it looks like that's what we're doing with SuperSport United for Makaula to play a bit higher. It seems like Umbata was playing as a lone six, if I can call it that. But do you think we've got the room and the allowance to be trying those things, Luke?
Football is funny because if we do it and we win matches, it will seem as if it's working. And if we do it and we lose matches, it will always be raised as hey, maybe we should actually go back to a team or a Makaula there. But I feel let's try it. If I had to speak to Talent, I would say, boy, this is an opportunity. Do it, because he's got the profile, he's got the qualities. The only thing that he needs is to just be consistent and understand the positioning. And I feel there's no other opportunity, because especially with this momentum that we have now, where we are winning matches, we should actually utilize this to our advantage. And hopefully, maybe if we can do it, get a couple of wins, 5 matches in a row playing there, maybe confidence and he will eliminate some mistakes if there are any, and he will grow into the role. And there's no other opportunity for me. I feel, especially when you are playing at home, this is an opportunity to actually use such a system to our advantage, so that opponents know when they are coming to us, Orlando, there will be no room or opportunity for them to play, because we will just be going all out. And it's an opportunity. I would say let's use it.
Yeah. Mlu again, and I'm coming to you, Simanga, big time with Kabelo Dlamini at 6. But Mlu again, just lastly, what do you say to someone who says Talent Mbata's best quality is late runs into making that third man run, that late run? Actually, he's got that in his game. He wants to actually run into spaces and arrive late. What would you say to someone who sort of says, but you're taking away from what is his best quality?
I would agree, but at the same time, I would also say, at a club like Orlando Pirates, I'm always advocating for versatility, Kuma player. And for me, I think because even us as fans, we've always been saying, hey, we need someone, to play Lapaya. Even some of us were advocating for Uyayas Tole, some of us were advocating for a Jamie Weber. But if Umbata can play in that role, and if he can improve, because what I like about him is that he's not going to be a player that's going to only sit there, but when there's a need to advance, he will also advance and he will offer us those qualities. So I would say, depending on games, you can actually play him there as a lone six, but also in other games where, obviously, depending on our opponents, you can actually change. So that is where now the aspect of a player being dynamic and being versatile would be helpful. In other games, he can help us as an 8 in other matches, but in most cases, I would prefer him ahlale laphaya, abe our Busquets type of player.
Yeah. Simanga, I want to ask you, what would be the logic for playing Makehlen Makaula higher up? And maybe as a secondary question to that, because I think I've got a suspicion of how you feel about that kind of logic. Is it not wiser to what would be the thinking for Orlando Pirates? I mean, because we might sit here and be missing what they're thinking, because actually, when I'm trying to think hard about this, is that usually when you see Pirates trying to stop the opposition, I mean, what we do in our press is we press with a front two, which usually will be our striker and Utito. They'll go as a 2, and then you'll have the wide players sort of following in a 3, actually, where you'll have Mofokeng and whether it be Saleng on the right, and then you'll actually have one central midfielder close behind the front 2, trying, I think, to stop their defensive midfielder who's trying to receive there. That's the only thinking I can think, why you play Makaula high upfield, because maybe he can be able to stop play. I mean, he's characterized at times as as a defensive midfielder or someone who's a ball winner in midfield. But what would the other logic be for having someone like Makaula playing as an 8? And would it not be wiser to then go by someone who's an 8 and maybe gives you a bit more energy and a bit more technical ability in that regard?
To be honest with you, Fums, it was quite a surprise for me to play Makaula that advance, because that's not his strength. However, I went back and actually watched the match basically from TV just to see anything that I might have missed. The only possible logic that I could think was maybe Jose thought if we could push him higher, we can able to win the ball higher, because we know Makaula is good in terms of marking and closing the spaces. Maybe the idea was for him to win the ball higher, so that at least we don't invite them in and we win it. That's the only logical. But the only thing that I saw though was a problem for me was Makaula is not able to come back, receive on the half space and turn and make a pass. We all know obviously it's not his ability to make those progressive passes, which is why from the 71st minute when Dlamini was introduced, that's when I enjoyed the game. That's why I was relaxed, because we were able to play from the back easy. Because when Bata dropped a little bit to come and receive 10, make that half 10 and make a progressive pass, Dlamini was able to also do it on the other side. So now we were not like playing with one person, because if you look at the first half, it was from Munda that we were able to play out, or we could then invite Umbata in to play out. So for me, it was really a bit strange, and I agree with you to say, why then don't we then go, if we don't have that profile for box to box, who's going to offer us more than what Makaula is doing? So it was a little bit surprising, but I think probably there are more reasons than what we think.
Yeah. Again, Simanga, sort of different question, but linked to what we're talking about, is to say we spoke a lot about, in preseason, that there's still a need in midfield. Now we saw Kabelo Dlamini playing as a 6, and we're heaping a lot of praises for him playing there. What's the feeling now? Should we still go out and buy a central midfielder? Should we just, settle on Kabelo Dlamini and just say you're no longer playing on the sort of inside wing that we see him being played at times? Are we settling on saying, no, let's not get another central midfielder, let's go with Kabelo Dlamini? Where do you stand with that kind of talk now?
To be honest with you, I still believe we still need that central midfielder, because as I say, it's not going to work on all games where Ukabelo, maybe he might be a game where he's being bullied because he has not been tested with tough tackling central midfielders, and he's able to win a ball back in those instances. So I'm saying we still need to go out. For me, I still see a need. I still see a need for us to be able. We can even release one player and then go fight, because I know Pirates always don't want to pay when it comes to. I don't see them going out and splashing money after splashing money on Gilberto. Then the only logical explanation is let's go for Zungu, because Zungu comes for free and he comes in, he resolved the problem that we have currently. That's my take, though.
Yeah. Lou, what's your midfield 3 in a big game? Let's say we're playing, Mamelodi Sundowns, or let's say we're playing Al Ahly. What's your midfield 3? And how
would
are
depend
they
whether it's at home. It would depend whether it's at home or it's away. But sometimes I do support having someone like a Tim and Mbata, or someone like a Makaula and Umbata. But in other instances, like I'm saying, at home, in a match where you want to intimidate our opponents and show them what you want to come at them, I am definitely for us playing with Dlamini, Umbata, and Utito in that midfield. The only thing that might cost us is the players themselves, because if you check all the matches, you watch all the matches that we play, it's always a matter of inconsistency with the guys. If the guys can just have it in themselves to say, we are going all out this season to be consistent in as many matches as possible, any personnel that plays can give us equality. But I was very happy with what I saw with Umbata, Utito, and Ukabelo Dlamini.
Yeah. And Mlu, again, where does Selailo Rasibucha then fit into this conversation?
So Rasebocha, like I said in previous episodes, he's a player who can offer us dynamism. He can play as a 6, he can play as a 8, he can play as a 10. So now he comes in if one of these guys are injured or suspended, and he also now comes in and he can offer us dynamism in any of those roles. And I feel Uguti, I'm hoping Uguti, when he gets his opportunity, he can use it, because the reason why Mhlampe Umakaula was actually played a bit further higher was probably a case Uguti, hey, maybe let's keep Usalalo, maybe he's not there yet, but he's a player that could have actually played there. Le role Makaula was playing. So I'm hoping Uguti he can actually come in and use the opportunity, okay? Because at a big club, like I've always said, you have to come in and immediately click on. So, but I was happy Uguti, these guys were also not really put in the deep end, because that also can be a dynamic that can play against us if you lose the match. But if you win, obviously it's kudos. But when you lose, then people tend to say, hey, we probably shouldn't have used all our new toys at once. But Uselailo, he's a player that I'm hoping when he comes in, I'm expecting a lot from him, because I know the boy from the School of Excellence. He's a boy that has equality. He can help us, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Simanga, here's a question for you. What's your midfield 3, given that Talent Mbata is injured? What does it look like? What's the shape? Are we playing the V? Are we playing this inverted V with 1 and 2 as we've been playing? Or what's your midfield 3 when Talent Mbata is out injured?
For me, if Mbata was going to be injured, I would possibly like to see what Mosele is able to bring us, because let us not forget the good performances that he did while he was still a cheaper. Remember also at some point he was even back in the national team, having been a cheaper. And I think that's also one of the reasons, that Orlando Pirates will take out a player to go on a loan, so that he becomes in a different environment, and then he also plays more. That would be one player that I would love to see him coming back and see what he brings, because I honestly still believe into that project, and I still believe that he could be the player that we want to be. I'm happy that Orlando Pirates did not release him, because he has not shown yet what we want to see. And I would really like him to be given a fair chance to show what he actually brings. So for me, it would be say, Mosele, throw you in the deep end. We've seen what you have done at Chipa. We've seen the men of the matches that you have won. Come and show us now in Escotini what you'll be able to bring.
Yeah. And then where does Ubaloni Simanga fit into this whole conversation?
To be quite honest, I think Ubaloni is gonna be drips and traps. So I saw him coming in. Obviously, there wasn't enough minutes to be able to, but I think he also gave that kind of a protection. But we can't really take much. And you know what? That's the difference between playing for Orlando Pirates and another team. Because as soon as you get a chance, whether it's 10 minutes, it's 5 minutes, show us with that 5 minutes what you have. That will be this particular player is ready to play. And if you come in, you don't show us that then we can't even advocate for you to play, because there's nothing that we see. And that's what we always tell to players, even if it's 10 minutes that you get, show us what is it exactly that you're able to bring the team in the very few chances that you actually get. That's why a player like Monyane, for instance, to a point that I get to a point where I'm failing to defend him, because he has been given a lot of time to show what we said, and he has not yet lived up to the expectation.
Okay, so something you're touching on, while I'm coming to you, Lou, but what Usmanga is touching on, he's touching on Umunyane. I think there's a conversation to be had there, right? And I mean, there's a lot of, I can imagine, it almost feels like, again, Umunyane is the same way we were waiting for Orlando Pirates to slip up, and then it's like, for some fans, not all of us, and some rightfully so, maybe, but you can answer that for me when I'm Lou, is to say, Did Munyani have a bad game? That's the question. Yeah, maybe let's go with that. Did Munyani have a bad game? Mlu?
Mfethu,
Yeah,
I think I've mentioned.
yeah, he didn't have a good game, and he and Usesane, yeah, it wasn't good, and we actually should count ourselves very lucky ukuthi Umonyane was not sent off in that match, because I was living in fear watching ukuthi there could be a moment in this game that could come where he gets sent off, but luckily he didn't. And at times I do feel sorry for the guy, because he was converted into a right back by Urulani. So he's not a natural right back, and at times I become very frustrated with him. But also at the same time, knowing the boy from his days, Youth Academy Pirates, when he was playing as a winger and at times even as a striker, where I felt he was better. I sometimes feel sorry for him, but obviously now, if you're a player playing at a club like an Orlando Pirates, supporters expect you to be consistent, and unfortunately for him, he hasn't really given us that consistency. Probably why the club has always also been linked with a new right back every transfer window, because in most matches he's been found wanting, unfortunately.
Yeah. Mama, did Munyani really have a bad game, or do you think that's that moment where a top striker like Redley Grobler deciding to stand on a right back sort of exaggerates this whole thing? It was a bad game, Gandhi. It was just a moment of, I mean, you see that a lot, even in the Premier League, where you'll have someone like a Dominic Calvert-Lewin choosing to go and stand on a Trent Alexander-Arnold. And what do you do? Is that a Munyani problem, or is it a case where it calls for leadership like Nda to say, I'm going to be the one who's going to go and have those duels, to swap side? I mean, something we saw was Nda was playing on the left, which I know Simanga loved. And, Sisani was playing on the right in center back. Nda on the left, Sisani on the right. Is it something where, the responsibility of Nda to say, let's swap sides so I can be the one who's really dueling with Ukrobe? Did Munyani have a bad game, or do you think that moment just is highlighting now or exaggerating that fact? It was a poor game by Munyani. Smang.
To be honest with you, Mfethu, I really feel for Umonyane, because as a defender, most instance, you have defenders that makes mistake, and for some reason it doesn't result to a goal. And with him on this particular game, he made one big mistake, because if you look, he actually went down a little bit, Pindo wa move to the inside, and then he left Ulokuzana alone. Also, I also think it was a tactical thing from Kevin Hunt coming into the second half, and he said, please target the space that exists between Monyane and Sesane. And you are absolutely right in a sense, Yoguti. You possibly what we would have done was obviously Unda to try and make sure Yoguti he follows Lokuzan that instance. And it did not happen in that instance. And also one more thing which was strange for me is we all know Uguti Ohrobla in this instance is a very, very good striker, especially with the head. Why did not play Umtetwa to then limit Ubrok? Because if Eno Umtetwa, and then you also have the advantage because both is good. You have Wunda, it's almost the same. So, but it's one of those things that will happen in a game, and then obviously afterwards we'll say what could have and what could have. But in all honesty, I don't think Monyane had a bad game. He just had one lapse of concentration in one moment, and it resulted in a goal. And unfortunately, everybody now is going to be on his neck.
Yeah. Let's park the defense and move on to, things that are much more positive. Mlu, what are your thoughts around Monapule Saleh?
Unbelievable player. You know, players like Abo Saleng are players that you need to have at a big club like Pirates. You know, his football stems around this thing that I term microdynamism in football, whereby he just does things that are out of the book. You know, he's the type of player like a typical Orlando Pirates player who as an attacker can just give you something out of nothing. And you know, we are blessed to have a player like that in our club. You know, all I'm just hoping for this season is consistency. But if there's any player that we should actually be calling the breadwinner, it's actually Usaleng himself, because that guy has always come. You know, there are moments. I mean, even in the final, it was him who set up the winner. So you know that guy is just unbelievable. I'm just hoping Uguti, he can have the attitude of a big player. If I could take a little bit of Tito and put it in him, because there are moments where I feel Uguti, he doesn't play with the confidence that he should. Especially for what he's done since coming to Pirates. Obviously, maybe last season, having come from the back of being a player of the season, maybe it might have played, you know, a part in him maybe being a bit down, and also the rumored transfer abroad, maybe. But I just hope Uguti this season he can just be with us and he can just continue to give us what he's giving us, because he's a special player.
Yeah. Simanga, what would be the reason for Usaleng to sit on the bench?
To be honest with you, Fums, I'm personally, on my own view, Orlando Pirates from back then, Nico Joseph Ngake, and back then we've always played with wingers. And that's what we've always been known for. Pace on the wing, taking on defenders and those cutbacks. You know, that's how we've been always playing. Usaleng is what is described what Orlando Pirates winger should be. Pace, and will be able to dribble and will be able to do those cutbacks. Direct. Usaleng gives you that directness that we want to go to goal. And for me, honestly, I'm one person that will always advocate us to play with two wingers on both sides. But I know in some games, Jose will prefer having a double 10, whereby then you allow the right back to occupy the space of the winger, and then he tucks in and then maybe add numbers into midfield. Maybe it will work in some games, but for me, that's not a game that I would love to see. Because also, what I've also mentioned is the fact that of our right back and our left wing, they were not going forward. So for us, if they are not providing with that width, then you must then have width of the winger.
Because Mlu, my thing that I keep getting, you know, stuck on and frustrated with is that besides Tsofatu Mabasa, who's going to score for Orlando Pirates?
Haaland himself, Evidence Mahopa. Evidence, you know, for me, I grew up also not liking tall strikers that play with their back towards goal. But I've learned, you know, to appreciate them. And I think Uguti at Pirates, we have to appreciate the different profiles we have. Umabasa will give you something different. Mahopa will also give you something different. And I think we will learn to appreciate this profile that we have in Evidence. But for me, I'm just hoping Uguti, because now he seems to have confidence, because I've been watching him really closely, even last season. He's starting to play with more and more and more confidence. And I am hoping Uguti, with the goal coming in the second half in this match, scoring, he can now actually be spurred on to play, because as a striker, you obviously will grow more in confidence as you are scoring more goals. So I'm hoping Uguti can score more goals, but I'm also hoping Uguti he can actually even score more from crosses and headers, because that's one element with game yake that I think he still needs to improve upon. Also knowing when to be in the box and sniff for opportunities, but also knowing when to actually drift, because the coach actually did mention, even Coach Hugo Bruce mentioned how he prefers having him because he's a player that's able to actually drift among defenders and give that aspect rather than just sitting in the box. But I just want him to be an all-round type of striker that can actually utilize the strengths that he has. But I've really been impressed with him, and he's definitely someone that can give us that option, especially now with the injuries that we have to Radio Pane. And I also heard Uti Ulebasa is also injured, who started the season like a house on fire last year. So I'm hoping Uti, while we have him and Umabasa, they can give us that aspect in terms of goal scoring, because we need it.
Yeah. Well, you know something, I'm glad you touched on that, but maybe let me ask the question differently, because here's what we were actually coming to that when I'm Lou. But thank you that you touched on it. But maybe let me ask the question differently, because what I'm actually asking is this: is that at a point in time, at a snapshot of the Orlando Pirates 11, because we know that when Mahopa's playing, Tsifatso Mabasa is not playing. Maybe the question I was supposed to ask it in this way is that if the striker, whoever it be, whether it's Mahopa or Evidence, whether it's Mahopa or Mabasa or Lepasa or Radio Pane who's playing, whoever it is, who's the second player on the pitch? Or where else are the goals coming from on the pitch for Orlando Pirates? Because the heart of the question really is to say, I mean, we saw what we get when we have Usaling on the pitch, is that we're getting, you know, when Mabasa is having a bit of a stinker like he did on Saturday, to which, I mean, there might be a lot of reasons to that. We can get into that, why he didn't get opportunities and stuff like that. Where else on the pitch are the goals coming from? And I think the heart of the question for me, Simanga, is that, you know, this is what you get from having Saleng on the pitch, because otherwise you need Mofokeng to do it when someone like Dlamini is playing on the right, because Dlamini is not going to give you that directness, Simanga, you are talking about. To be able to take someone on in the box and create an assist or go for goal like that, or actually penetrate or exploit the space behind the defenders, quite like we saw with Evidence Mahopa's goal, where Saleng actually gets those opportunities where he can put the ball in the back of the net, but you're not getting Dlamini in that position. And so, I mean, there is this problem to say that now you have all your players coming towards the ball and no one actually stretching the space behind, you know, when Saleng is not playing. And could that possibly be a reason why we're not going to get a lot of goals? So that's why I'm asking the question, to say, if the striker is not scoring, where else are the goals coming from for Orlando Pirates? Smart.
Absolutely, Mfethu. What you're talking about is very key, because not every game is Mabasa. As much as he was a top goal scorer last season, he's going to score goals. It's not every moment that we're going to create chances for him to play. That is when you need the other players to come to play and bring you goals. That's why then a Saleng for me will always be an option, because he gives you goals. So you've got one source of goals, which is your striker. But if that doesn't happen, then you have a Saleng that is able to give you goals. And then the other thing as well, which is a game, especially on Umaswangai this season, I'm hoping he also takes it a notch up, where his game actually his game, he adds goals into his game. And this is one of a conversation that we've had with people. I think it was a moment where Pirates were interested in Aziz. And I wrote a trend on Twitter about what actually an Aziz kicker. Because if you go and look at my stats, he scored about 21 goals as a central attacking midfielder. And then that's where when it gets to where I say Utito needs to up his game in that aspect, where he plays very well, but we need him to add a little bit of goals, because goals are not going to come from Mabasa in some games, and we need them to top up. Another also player that we also need to get goals into his game, it is Mngani. You know, Urele, he needs to add some goals. When he gets those chances, he needs to be more clinical. And if we could get a Rele who can be clinical, we get a Saleng playing almost all the games, and we're playing according to his strength, then we up Utito in terms of him getting goals. And then the last aspect, which I've always been crying for, is for Mtetwa to get a chance. Because Mtetwa, out of all the central midfielders, the centre backs that we have, he is the only one that has goals in him. There are some games where they will be locked up and there's no chances, but we get those set pieces, score them. Also, what I did not like on this game was that free kick that I told you about, Fumane, whereby they gave it to Uhoto. And I was like, why? Because that was a chance for us to score goals. Why don't you give to your best player for that we've always known is a source of goals in that kind of situation? Not to say Otto is not. I've seen him scoring goals in Africa, but at Orlando Pirates, we know that in that moment, the best player for that is Udlamini.
Yeah.
So for me, all those people that I've mentioned, if we could get goals on them, I think we will get a challenge. Usantans would get a challenge for the league.
Because, and I hear you, Mlu, but I hear you when Asmang, I'm sorry. But because I think at the heart again of what I'm saying is it's one thing to get those players like you've mentioned, Maswanganyi, Dlamini, all of those people to get goals. I mean, that's one aspect of it. But I think again, for me, and I want to push you when I'm Lou to say the way to get goals is to be in the box, is to be in the 6-yard area, is to be in the box, to be where the ball is gonna fall, and there we can bet on at least you're gonna get some goals. But the struggle for me is that you're not gonna have Dlamini there a lot of the time. You're not gonna have Tito there a lot of the time. So this is where I come in with the Saleng talk to say, for me, it's not so much that I'm saying Saleng is a great finisher or is a great goal scorer, or that, which he is, but it's the fact that he gets in those positions. And how many other players do we have at Orlando Pirates that want to be there? Whether they score or not is a different conversation. But I think what you're getting from Umufukeng is that he wants to be on the wing. He wants to come deep and be involved in the play, which is then further for him to get in the box and score. But the thing with Saleng is we saw with the set piece here, Orlando Pirates, where there was a great graphic, I think I saw it on social media, when Udlamini gets the ball. By the way, it was a great pass by him to find someone at the back post to put the ball in the back of the net, which is eventually Saleng, right? But none of us see Saleng busting a gut to get in that position to put the ball in the back of the net. In fact, everyone is this side of the SuperSport United line. But when he plays that ball, only one player, guess what, is busting his gut to get in the 6-yard area to put the ball in the back of the net. And so this is part of the conversation for me to say, it's all great. I was thankfully, gratefully part of Twitter Spaces on Twitter with Umuzi last night. And, as I'm speaking, I'm starting to think, Uguti, actually, like, how many players want to score goals at Orlando Pirates? And again, the thing for me is wanting to score the goals. It's one thing to be able to do it, but I think the want is the most important thing for me. And so, Mlu, I want to ask you this question again, to touch on it again slightly. Is that pressure then to say, because I don't think we're going to see Maswanganyi wanting to score many goals. It's, again, like I say, it's an issue of wanting. I don't think Maswanganyi is going to want to score. I don't think Dlamini wants to score a lot of goals. And so is the pressure on Gilberto to then come in? Is it pressure on someone like Mlungisi, again, we've spoken about, to build that desire in him? He's very moldable at age, 20, I think he is, in a few months. In October, I think he's going to be turning 20. Is the pressure on these two guys to say, we need more people on the pitch who actually want to be where Saleng is at when Dlamini is playing that ball? Is the pressure on guys like that?
Definitely. You need more goals from all these different players. And I am also hoping ukuthi even our defenders can also help in terms of chipping in ama goal. That is why Usman was advocating for Umthetho to be given a chance, because he aerially can give us that aspect of coming in and scoring from set pieces. So I'm hoping God Uguti, someone like Enda must also be able to come up and score. So all these players, they need to come to the party in terms of helping, in terms of scoring goals. The attackers, obviously, we will always expect them to chip in, but there will be matches where you will need to have your defenders also coming in, even your midfielders like your Tim. And I was happy when I saw him scoring in preseason as well. You need to have goals coming from everywhere if you are a team that wants to challenge and win a league title. It's happened before in our treble winning years where we had people like Habole Khwati, they would take it upon themselves, Nabo Sangwen, to say we are going and we are chipping in with goals. And you find, would say, it's those small margins, those goals actually help you in a match where maybe you're supposed to lose or draw. A defender comes in, chips in with a goal, or an unexpected player for that matter. So I am hoping, Uguti, everyone can just share that responsibility, because it will actually ease the burden as well. Because you do not want to be in a situation where if Usaleng is off and Umaba Samshampe is marked, and then you don't know where the goals are going to come from. You need to share that burden, and I'm hoping Uguta Machita can take it upon themselves. Like you are saying, Uguti, it's a matter of them just wanting it. Ebholeni kufuneka sometimes that element yenkani that people like Ole Khwati, they used to have, or Sangweni, they used to have that, or Roy Mahamuta, they used to have it, saying ukuthi let's just go ngenkani, we are doing it. And we've got the players that can give us that. I'm hoping ukuthi the guys can just believe in themselves a little bit more.
Yeah. Great shout, Mlu. Something you spoke about in one of the preseason, review sort of conversations we were having was an observation that you made, and you brought it up that you saw that Orlando Pirates had some fancy equipment where the performance analyst might have been analyzing, getting some footage. And you pointed that out to say, it's a great thing to see for us to say, hey, there's a bit of due diligence. I might be mincing your words, but you pointed it out to us to say you saw that these guys were getting all those footage, and they're working to improve our game from a performance analyst viewpoint. Right now, Simanga, I want to come to you. Talk to us about something we saw. Maybe Mlu might not have seen on TV, but we saw immediately when I beg your pardon. Abongile Tom, who's very topical right now in South Africa. Talk to us about a moment where when Abongile Tom blew the whistle for halftime that we saw as the guys are going into the changing room.
Sure, but I think this talks to something that you have touched on your podcast as well, when Fumane, where you're saying Ugubugeli Bola on TV is different to what is in the stadium, because there's some stuff that you can't see on TV. But you say something that when we were sitting together, we noticed when Mlu was the goalkeeper coach running towards a goalpost. Iolanda, a camera that was behind the goalpost, Kashayid, and he was rushing back to the changing room. And we were talking about it clearly, no, Fumane, and we were saying he's probably gonna go there just Uguyo review all those moments or whatever that they wanted to do. And it was something that was interesting to see, in all honesty.
Yeah. I think it was just to add on that, and you've said it well when Asmang is, so the camera is actually behind the goal, and it's a goalkeeper cam. It's only capturing Sipho Shahine, his movement. It's like a tall object behind the goal, and I'm betting it's looking at where he's at, maybe on set pieces, things like that, where he's at when the play maybe is in SuperSport United half. I mean, we will have seen last season Umar scoring from the half here Kaizer Chiefs. And I'm thinking they're looking at that footage in the halftime to say, how's your positioning been? How did we concede this goal? and they're working on that. And I think there's a conversation here to be had, because a lot of the time we like to point out the negatives, right, as fans, and maybe that's so easy for us to do. But I think that was worth for us to bring up when Simanga, to say this is the due diligence that I think is giving us an advantage, and we are not noticing these things, right? And yeah, so just to add, on what you had already started touching on in the preseason, Lou, is there's a lot of work that's happening that we're not seeing, but when you see, you start to appreciate a bit more. But yeah, gents, I think maybe where we want to end off with this one, or maybe let me ask you, how did it feel when I'm Lou to see Vincent Pule out playing for SuperSport United?
Vincent Pule is a player that I like a lot. I was sad to see him leaving Orlando Pirates. He's the type of player that I felt had unfinished business, but obviously, due to injuries and obviously, with the players like Habonkota emerging, signing Enjengo Gilberto also coming through, you would actually prefer maybe to release a player rather than keeping them idling, on the stands. But he's a player that has a very good attitude, and I was not surprised to see him scoring. In fact, I was watching the match, and I could see if SuperSport were to score, if the goal was not going to come from him, maybe someone like a Grobler would have scored. So I was not surprised to see him scoring. He's a player that has goals in him. In fact, I actually see him as a player that would actually even score more goals playing as a roaming number 10, because that's where I think his strength is, and that's where we saw him scoring goals for us as well at Pirates. So it was disappointing to see him wearing a different shirt, but from a human perspective, seeing him playing was actually very good, because injuries were really, really a problem for him, but well done to him.
Yeah. Simanga, entirely keeping with the human perspective, what did you make of Orlando Pirates fans booing Vincent Pule?
Disappointing. Totally disappointing, in all honesty, because I don't mind when we boo certain players, for instance, like a Lodge, for instance, that decided to teach us and go to the other side. But for somebody like Upule, he did not ask to leave Orlando Pirates. His contract was not renewed, and he has served us well. Actually, it's one player that I've always loved. And also for Mane, it talks to this thing that we always talk about, would say, it does not mean when a certain player at Orlando Pirates is being released or not playing well, it means he's a bad player. It just means at that particular point, it did not work. And I think Upule, after his injury, he has never been the same player. And I'm so happy for him to be able to get into Elox. I mean, coming from playing 5 games or so the entire season to then put up 120 man of the match shift. And for me, that was very great to see. What I also loved, which possibly I also see social media being players going to Upule, embracing him and seeing the brotherhood that they had in the team, and also the influence that then Pule had on the team. And then I was like, but this is beautiful to see. Why would you go boo such a player, man?
Yeah. No, great stuff, gents. I think let's end it off. Let's not get into other things. I think we've chewed the ears of the people enough now, but just maybe as a last comment to what you're saying, if we're gonna boo anyone, with all due respect, and I respect him as a human, but I think someone who maybe deserves a bit of booze from us is Umchita Utri, in the words of Paseka Mako. Anyway, it's been a great episode again, gents. You lot are incredible human beings. But yeah, until next time, up the mighty Bucks. Cheers.
Up the Bucks.
Away.